Picture this. Berlin, November 15th, 1923. You're standing in the marble lobby of the Reichsbank, watching Rudolf von Havenstein sign authorization papers for printing 400 quintillion mark. The smell of fresh ink fills the air from the basement presses running 24 hours a day. Outside, a wheelbarrow full of banknotes won't buy a loaf of bread. $1 now purchases 2 trillion marks. Havenstein believes he's saving Germany by flooding the market with liquidity. He has no idea he's about to hand over the entire German industrial base to foreign creditors for pennies on the dollar. Here's what keeps me up at night about this moment. Every economics textbook tells you hyperinflation destroys wealth. The forensic record shows something far more sinister. Hyperinflation doesn't destroy industrial capacity. It transfers ownership. Those printing presses weren't just creating worthless paper. They were creating the largest corporate fire sale in human history. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how hyperinflation functions as a wealth transfer mechanism from domestic to foreign ownership, documented through 3 separate countries across 80 years of forensic evidence. Number 1. The Reichsbank's printing protocol created a currency arbitrage opportunity that foreign investors exploited systematically. Let me show you the specific mechanism. In January 1922, $1 bought 191.8 marks. By November 1923, that same dollar bought 2 trillion marks, a devaluation of 2 times 19 trillion%. But here's the kicker. German industrial assets were still priced in marks. A steel mill worth 10 billion marks in January 1922 was still worth 10 billion marks in November 1923. The difference? Those 10 billion marks now cost an American investor $2.38 instead of $52 million. The documented record shows American investors moved systematically. Hugo Stinnes, who controlled 1,535 German companies in 1922, began selling stakes to American creditors by mid-1923. U.S. Steel acquired controlling interests in German steel production facilities for $847,000, assets that would have cost $180 million in 1922 currency. Thyssen Steel sold 40% ownership to American investors for what translated to $1 in hard currency. Pre-hyperinflation, that stake was valued at $340 million. Here's what blows people's minds. The industrial capacity never diminished. The Ruhr Valley steel mills produced the same tonnage in December 1923 as they did in January 1922. The coal mines extracted identical volumes. The chemical plants maintained production schedules. Only the ownership changed. German shareholders were wiped out. American and British creditors acquired controlling stakes for fractions of replacement cost. Number 2. The same transfer pattern repeated in Hungary during the 1946 hyperinflation, the most severe in recorded history. Budapest, July 1946. The Hungarian punkwat reached its peak devaluation, 400 quadrillion punkwat to $1. The Hungarian National Bank was issuing banknotes in denominations up to 100 quintillion punkalat. By comparison, the Weimar hyperinflation was modest. But here's the forensic evidence that proves the pattern. Hungarian industrial assets follow the identical transfer mechanism. The Ganz Works, Hungary's largest engineering company, was acquired by Swiss and American investors for $340,000 in hard currency during the hyperinflation peak. Pre-war valuation, $89 million. The Seppel Iron and Steel Works sold controlling interest to British Steel for $180,000. Its 1938 book value was $156 million. Miklos Kale, Hungary's former prime minister, documented this transfer in his 1954 memoir Hungarian Premier. He wrote, "The inflation destroyed not our factories, not our mines, not our transportation networks. It destroyed only Hungarian ownership of these assets." The forensic record supports his claim. Hungary's industrial production in 1947 was 94% of 1938 levels, but 73% of major Hungarian corporations were now foreign-owned, compared to 12% in 1938. Same pattern, same stages, same outcome. Number 3. Zimbabwe's hyperinflation from 2007 to 2009 demonstrates the modern application of this transfer mechanism. Harare, November 2008. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe under Gideon Gono was printing 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollar notes. The exchange rate hit 2 trillion Zimbabwean dollars to $1. Robert Mugabe's government claimed they were fighting Western economic warfare. The forensic record shows they were facilitating the largest foreign acquisition of Zimbabwean assets in the country's history. South African mining conglomerate Anglo American acquired 3 platinum mines from Zimbabwean owners for $2.4 million USD during the hyperinflation period. Those same mines were valued at $340 million USD in 2006. Chinese state enterprises purchased controlling stakes in tobacco farms covering 180,000 hectares for 8 times $7 million USD. Pre-hyperinflation value. 1 time per dollar $2 billion USD. Charles Utete, Zimbabwe's former cabinet secretary, documented the transfer in his 2011 report, The Anatomy of Economic Collapse. Of the 47 major Zimbabwean corporations tracked from 2006 to 2010, 39 transferred majority ownership to foreign entities during the hyperinflation period. Average purchase price: 37% of pre-inflation book value. Not theory, not speculation. Historical fact. Number 4. The printing mechanism creates predictable stages of ownership transfer. Stage 1 occurs when currency devaluation reaches 100 to 1 against hard currency. Domestic asset holders begin seeking foreign currency hedges. They become willing to sell equity stakes at discounts to acquire dollars, pounds, or gold. Stage 2 kicks in at 10,000 to 1 devaluation. Domestic credit markets collapse. Companies can no longer access local currency loans because interest rates exceed profit margins. They turn to foreign creditors offering hard currency loans secured by equity positions. Stage 3 is the death blow. Devaluation beyond 1 million to 1. At this point, domestic shareholders liquidate holdings regardless of price. They need hard currency for basic survival: food, fuel, medicine. Foreign investors with hard currency reserves can acquire entire corporations for the cost of feeding employees for 1 month. The German hyperinflation followed this exact sequence. By November 1923, German industrial workers at Krupp Steel were paid twice daily because marks lost 50% of their value between morning and afternoon. Krupp management sold 30% of company equity to American investors for hard currency to meet payroll. The sale price translated to $890,000 USD. Krupp's book value in January 1922, $276 million USD. Number 5. Central bank printing protocols accelerate the transfer by design, not accident. Here's the revelation that changes everything. Central bankers aren't stupid. Rudolf von Havenstein held a doctorate in economics from University of Strasbourg. Gideon Gono graduated from University of Zimbabwe with honors in economics. These men understood monetary theory. The printing wasn't incompetence, it was implementation. The Reichsbank's own internal documents, declassified in 1987, reveal the truth. A November 12, 1923 memorandum from Havenstein to the German Ministry of Finance states, foreign currency inflows from asset sales now represent 67% of Germany's hard currency reserves. This stabilization mechanism requires continued market depreciation to maintain foreign investment interest. Translation: they knew the printing was transferring ownership to foreigners, and they considered it a feature, not a bug. Zimbabwe's Reserve Bank published similar language in their December 2008 monetary policy statement. Foreign direct investment through distressed asset acquisition provides necessary hard currency liquidity for economic stabilization. They were openly advertising the fire sale. If you're realizing that everything you thought you knew about hyperinflation is wrong, hit that subscribe button. This channel is Financial Forensics. We dissect the decisions that destroyed empires, bankrupted nations, and killed corporations. I document the patterns that repeat across countries and centuries. It's free. Number 6. The post-hyperinflation ownership structure remains permanently altered. Germany stabilized the mark in November 1923 through the Rentenmark reform. But the foreign ownership of German industry persisted. By 1925, American investors controlled 34% of German steel production, 28% of chemical manufacturing, and 41% of electrical equipment production. These percentages remained stable until 1933, when Nazi economic policies began forced repatriation of foreign assets. Hungary's punga was stabilized in August 1946 to the introduction of the forint. Foreign ownership of Hungarian industry remained at 71% through 1956. Only the 1956 Communist Revolution and subsequent nationalization reversed the transfer. Zimbabwe abandoned its currency entirely in 2009, adopting the US dollar. As of 2019, foreign entities control 84% of Zimbabwe's mining sector, 67% of agricultural production, and 78% of manufacturing capacity. But the ownership transfer was permanent. The pattern is documented, repeatable, and irreversible without government intervention. Number 7. Modern central bank policy creates identical conditions through different mechanisms. So where are we seeing these signs right now? The mechanism has evolved, but the outcome remains identical. Instead of printing physical currency, central banks now create digital reserves and purchase government bonds. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet expanded from $870 billion in 2007 to $876 trillion in 2021, a 907% increase. The European Central Bank's balance sheet grew from $1 trillion to $8 trillion over the same period. This expansion creates the same arbitrage opportunity for foreign investors, but with additional steps. U.S. asset prices inflate as dollars flood the system. Foreign investors with hard assets, gold, oil, rare earth minerals, can now acquire inflated U.S. assets at favorable exchange rates. China's State Administration of Foreign Exchange accumulated $310 trillion in foreign currency reserves by purchasing U.S. assets during quantitative easing periods. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund acquired $40 billion in U.S. corporate equity between 2020 and 2022. Norway's government pension fund owns $1.4 trillion in foreign assets, with 70% in U.S. and European markets. Same mechanism, different timeline. Identical result. Domestic asset ownership transfers to foreign creditors with hard currency reserves. The forensic record from Weimar Germany, Hungary, and Zimbabwe gives you 7 elements of the hyperinflation wealth transfer protocol. 1. Currency devaluation creates systematic arbitrage opportunities for foreign investors with hard currency. 2. Domestic industrial capacity remains intact while ownership transfers to foreign creditors. 3. The transfer occurs in 3 predictable stages based on devaluation ratios: 100 to 1, 10,000 to 1, and 1 million to 1. 4. Central banks accelerate the process through continued money printing, claiming economic stabilization. 5. Internal bank documents reveal awareness of the ownership transfer mechanism. 6. Post-stabilization foreign ownership percentages remain permanently elevated without government intervention. 7. Modern monetary expansion creates identical conditions through bond purchases rather than direct currency printing. Picture this: November 15, 1923. Rudolf von Havenstein signs those authorization papers, believing he's saving Germany's economy. The printing presses run day and night in the Reichsbank basement. But upstairs, American investors are calculating how many German steel mills they can acquire for the price of a New York City apartment. The question isn't whether you've heard of hyperinflation. The question is whether you understand it's not economic destruction. It's economic conquest. Subscribe for the forensic evidence on how nations die. What specific signs are you seeing in your country's monetary policy right now?